The crystal stemware shook in my hand as I stood by the oak bar of the country club, watching my cousin's engagement party unfold like a choreographed stage play. Everyone wore brilliant, rehearsed smiles, the kind that magically vanished the moment their eyes drifted toward my corner of the room. I checked my phone for the third time, but the screen remained completely blank, offering no updates from my partner across the globe. He was supposed to be wrapping up an international aviation conference in Zurich, but the time difference made tracking him a guessing game. Suddenly, a sharp, familiar voice broke my focus, dripping with the forced sweetness reserved exclusively for public gatherings. It was my mother, gracefully guiding an older, wealthy couple toward my isolated spot while adjusting the diamond pendant resting on her collarbone. She introduced me with a tight smile, telling them I was currently navigating a transitional phase in my personal life. I forced myself to stay quiet rather than correct her, exhausted by the fact that after a 2-year engagement, she still acted like my partner was a ghost. As the couple drifted away into the crowd, my phone finally vibrated, but it was only my design team in Dubai sending updates for tomorrow's corporate presentation. Desperate to escape the suffocating atmosphere of clinking glasses and fake laughter, I hurried down the quiet marble hallway toward the restroom, needing a silent place to make a call. I dialed his number, hoping the sound of his voice would ground me before I completely lost my composure in this sea of family hostility. Before the call could connect, the sound of muffled amusement echoed from around the corner, stopping me dead in my tracks. It was my mother and my aunt, their voices carrying that distinct, condescending tone that had defined my entire childhood. My mother scoffed loudly, mocking the idea of someone being engaged for 2 full years to a man nobody had ever actually seen in person. My aunt chimed in with a sharp laugh, jokingly asking if an aviation consultant was just a fancy word for a flight attendant. The words cut through me like ice, causing my fingers to lose their grip as my phone clattered loudly against the polished marble floor. I refused to let the tears fall, refusing to give them the satisfaction of breaking me, even if they could not see me standing there. In that heavy silence, memories of my youth rushed back, reminding me of the day my father stood in our kitchen, furious that I was walking away from law school. They had both dismissed my passion, calling my international graphic design career nothing more than a childish hobby. I remembered how my mother used to react during our holiday video calls after I moved away to establish my branding firm in Europe. Every time I shared a major victory or a new corporate contract, she would offer a hollow compliment before immediately changing the subject to my cousin's corporate promotions. Standing in the hallway, I pressed my hand against the textured wall to steady myself, realizing how dangerous it was to let the past consume me tonight. My mind drifted back to the rainy afternoon I first met my fiancé in a corporate boardroom in Switzerland, remembering how his eyes crinkled when he smiled. He had listened to my branding presentation with genuine respect, validating my talent in a way my own flesh and blood never cared to do. When I told him that night how my family viewed my career as a joke, he held my hand and told me they simply did not know me at all. I shook off the memories, straightened my spine, and looked at my reflection in the ornate gold mirror at the end of a hall. My tailored emerald dress fit perfectly, selected specifically to project absolute success, without looking like I was trying too hard to impress anyone. The heavy diamond on my left hand caught the bright hallway lights, serving as a physical reminder that my life was real, no matter what they whispered. My cousin stepped into the hallway, her white dress trailing behind her as she loudly announced that the family was gathering for the ceremonial toasts. I quickly touched up my lipstick and adjusted my dress, smoothing down the emotional mask I had worn for as long as I could remember. Just then, a new text flashed on my phone, with my fiancé stating he had finished early and was rushing to join me. A sudden wave of clarity washed over me, shifting something deep inside my chest as I replied, begging him to get to the club immediately. For my entire life, I had desperately chased the approval of people who were fundamentally incapable of celebrating my joy or respecting my ambition. Tonight, walking back toward the crowded ballroom, I finally understood that their validation was a prize that held absolutely no actual value. As I approached the microphone, my mother offered a beaming smile from the front row, clearly expecting another passive, obedient compliance from her youngest daughter. She had no idea that the quiet, submissive girl who used to play perfect piano recitals just to please her had vanished years ago. I cleared my throat, letting my gaze sweep across the wealthy crowd as the room fell silent under the precise acoustics of the hall. I began my speech by stating that when two people choose to build a life together, they deserve a solid foundation of belief and unwavering support. I noted how beautiful it was that my cousin received that validation effortlessly, with every milestone celebrated and documented by everyone in the room. My mother's smile faltered slightly as my eyes locked onto hers, the tension in the air turning thick and heavy. I continued, my voice steady as I noted that some people are forced to build their success, while those closest to them whisper cruel doubts. I raised my glass high into the silence, raising a toast to everyone who succeeded despite the skepticism of the people who should have believed in them. A scattered, uncomfortable applause followed my words, breaking the thick tension as I stepped away from the podium and walked into the crowd. My childhood friend slipped through the guests and caught my arm, showing me her glowing phone screen where the family group chat was scrolling. The messages were filled with mocking comments from my relatives, claiming I needed therapy and was inventing a fake relationship just to compete with my cousin. My father's deep voice drifted from a nearby table, casually dismissing my entire international career as a temporary phase that had lasted far too long. My friend whispered that my brother had spent the evening telling guests my business was just basic freelance work done from local coffee shops. The sheer weight of their decades of collective dismissal settled over me, but instead of crushing my spirit, it ignited a cold sense of resolve. I watched my mother holding court near the elaborate gift table, completely unaware that her web of lies was about to unravel. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with a final alert from my fiancé, notifying me that he was less than 2 minutes away from the venue. At the same exact moment, the loud, rhythmic throb of helicopter blades began to echo deeply through the quiet night air, interrupting the background music. The powerful sound vibrated through the floorboards, causing conversations to stall as guests looked up toward the ceiling in utter confusion. My mother immediately tried to maintain control, loudly claiming to the surrounding guests that a wealthy client must have arrived at the wrong venue. My father pulled out his phone to contact building security, while my aunt jokingly asked my cousin if she had planned a grand surprise. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my drink, watching the carefully orchestrated chaos unfold exactly the way I knew it would. The roaring sound grew deafening, drawing the wealthy crowd toward the massive glass windows overlooking the manicured lawns of the country club. I walked calmly toward the terrace doors, my movements entirely unhurried as my mother's fingers suddenly clamped tightly around my wrist, demanding to know where I was going. I turned to face her, removing her hand gently as I told her I was going to welcome my partner. The sleek black aircraft touched down on the green grass, its landing lights sweeping across the dark garden as the rotors slowly came to a halt. The cabin door opened, and my fiancé stepped out into the cool evening air, looking absolutely immaculate in his tailored charcoal suit. A collective gasp rippled through the terrace guests as he walked toward me, kissing my forehead before greeting my stunned relatives. He extended his hand to my father, speaking with absolute corporate authority as he apologized for the delay caused by an international conference call. He casually mentioned the massive contract my branding firm had just secured in the Middle East, causing my mother's face to pale instantly. She stared down at her phone screen, where a major business headline confirming my multi-million-dollar deal was prominently displayed. The entire energy of the evening shifted completely, leaving my family scrambling to completely rewrite the history of how they had treated me. Relatives who had spent years mocking my ambitions suddenly crowded around us, desperately trying to insert themselves into my newfound success. My mother nervously claimed she had always supported my creative path, completely forgetting the years she spent trying to force me into law school. My brother tried to claim credit for inspiring my work, but I quickly reminded him of his past insults, leaving the conversation incredibly awkward. My fiancé eventually guided me away from the suffocating crowd, leading me out onto the quiet balcony where the city lights glittered far below us. Looking back through the glass at my parents, I realized their approval no longer had any power over my life or my choices. The next morning, my mother called my hotel room, her voice trembling as she desperately tried to invite me to family gatherings and investment opportunities. I calmly cut her off, pointing out that their sudden change of heart was entirely about using my success rather than genuine love. Instead of accepting her excuses, I invited my parents to fly out to Dubai the following month to see my reality. When they arrived at my corporate headquarters weeks later, they were visibly stunned by the massive scale of the global enterprise I had built entirely on my own. Standing in my executive office, surrounded by international design awards and elite branding portfolios, my mother wept as she confessed how wrong they had been. I accepted her tears calmly, knowing that any future relationship we shared would happen entirely on my own terms. Months passed, and the painful sting of their validation slowly transformed into a quiet, unshakable peace that lived deep inside my heart. I focused my energy on mentoring young, ambitious designers who were facing the exact same familial skepticism that I had fought for so long. My parents gradually learned to respect my boundaries, sending thoughtful letters and participating in structured holiday visits without the old manipulation. Standing on my balcony in Dubai next to the man who had always believed in me, I looked out at the infinite horizon. I realized that the ultimate victory was not about crushing the people who doubted me or staging a dramatic confrontation at a party. The greatest revenge was simply building a life so incredibly full and authentic that their approval became completely irrelevant.